to win the game. You don't play to just play. Come after me! I'm a man! I'm for you! Can't wait! Let's go!
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show powered by Sports Empire Network. Thank you so much for making us part of your morning routine, whether you are live on Facebook with us right now, maybe you are live on YouTube, maybe you are watching us live on Roku TV. Regardless, we are happy that you are here. I am Chris, and of course, that over there, that is Mo. Mo, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing well, partner. Morning all. Just ready to get started.
We are creeping closer and closer to the Super Bowl. Mo, obviously, this time of the year, Super Bowl week, we have all of the conversations that come with the Super Bowl. But unfortunately, we also have those conversations about those who just couldn't quite get it done. Some of the greatest athletes in the NFL who never won a Super Bowl, whether they just didn't get there, whether they got there a couple of times and they couldn't get it done. And Mo, 3 names come to mind, and I'm going to give you, they're all offensive players, and they all play different offensive positions. I'm just going to give you these names, and I want you to tell me, would a Super Bowl, one Super Bowl, all right, would one Super Bowl have drastically changed the legacy of any of these 3 players? The first player is going to come from the wide receiver position, and that is Randy Moss. The second player is going to come from the running back position, and that is Barry Sanders. And the third player is going to come from the quarterback position, and that is Dan Marino. Now, Mo, I think initially everyone's going to gravitate towards Marino, right? Because quarterbacks is about championships, and quarterbacks,
sure,
that's really what it comes down to. But I think so many of Marino's records have fallen, right? Like the passing records and the touchdown and individual season records, he doesn't hold those anymore. So I feel like once Marino kind of lost his hold on the record books, his legacy, at least in my mind, it kind of is what it is. I don't know if one ring changes anything for Marino now, right? Because before he had all those records, but he never won a ring. So now you're looking at a guy who was actively leading the NFL in a time of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and all these other great quarterbacks. And he had the most touchdown passes in a season at 48. And he had the most yards passing in a season. And then slowly but surely in the mid 2010s, those numbers started to fall off because other guys eclipsed him. And now you look at him and he is absolutely an all-time great quarterback. I think he should be top 5 on everyone's list. I don't know if a ring elevates him any higher. What do you think?
It's weird, right? Because Marino kind of defies the rules. He's top 5 without having won a Super Bowl. That's you. I don't know if anybody else could pull that off. Like, it's not a secret that obviously I'm a 49ers fan. And I think Joe Montana is one of the 2 or 3 greatest to ever do it. But if Joe Montana had his same career minus the Super Bowls, he wouldn't be top 5. I don't know if he'd be top 10. Like that's just the real of it. Marino is so unique, and you're right. Guys have come and eclipsed his numbers, but he did those things in a completely different NFL. In a completely different NFL. Like, look, I don't take away from great players of this era or any era, but if Dan Marino jumped into this NFL at age 22,
jeez,
I'm just being real. He jumped into this NFL at age 22. I'm talking about somebody that's basically going to throw for 5,000 yards every, like, it'll be a normal thing. And when he didn't throw for 5,000 yards, you'd be like, what's wrong with Marino? His touchdowns would be insane through the roof. So I don't want to knock anybody that's made great achievements of this era. I just want to point out how great I feel Dan Marino was and how ahead of his time he was. So you're right. He's very unique. Him having a ring, it would be great because you could say he won one, but without it, he's top 5 anyway. I don't think the ring would elevate him to number 1. It wouldn't elevate him to number 1. You might go, I don't know, Joe. You got the 4, but Dan got 1, and look what he was working with. You might. I have no problem with that conversation. But I don't know if it changes his overall legacy because he's held in such high esteem already.
So that leaves us with Randy Moss and Barry Sanders. Would a ring do anything for their legacies?
So would it, if Randy Moss won a ring, would it change the thought process of who's the greatest wide receiver of all time? No, it wouldn't change it wouldn't change that. I don't think, I think the only guy, let me just skip ahead. The only guy this would really change for would be Barry Sanders. I think it would change for Barry Sanders more than anybody. One, obviously that would mean Detroit won a Super Bowl. So that's massive. That's massive. So of course that would matter. And for Barry Sanders, a lot of people have him as the greatest running back of all time. I don't. I think he's the most exciting running back I've ever seen. But if he had a Super Bowl to his resume, I think that would move him up wherever you rank running backs. Not to number 1. I don't have him at number 1. I've got him behind Walter Payton. I never saw Jim Brown play. I see the highlights and I know the numbers, so I'm not going to argue how great Jim Brown was. I'm more impressed by Eric Dickerson. I could keep going, but yeah, I think it would mean a lot more to Barry Sanders' career. Obviously, like I said, the Lions as a franchise have not had a lot of success. So for you to be the catalyst of their only Super Bowl, Barry's a made man in that city now. If he had won a Super Bowl, Barry could run for governor and win by a landslide.
Mo, at this time, we got a big show today. Big show for a Wednesday. We got Will coming on here in a second. We got a lot of things to talk about, NBA. We got Gene from Wire to Wire later on today. We haven't seen Gene in a hot minute. He's coming back to talk some football stuff heading into Super Bowl weekend. But at this time, let's welcome Will on to the show. Will, how are you this morning, sir?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Hey, morning, Will.
Well, let's jump right into it, and let's start with Klay Thompson. So a lot was made of Klay Thompson getting benched a couple days ago in the win over Brooklyn. He was benched essentially for the last 7+ minutes of the game. He's been saying all of the politically correct things, although you would have to imagine that this is frustrating for someone who was a Splash Brother, is still considered by many a Splash Brother, is not playing like a Splash Brother, and is clearly not the same player since the injuries that he has suffered. Will, is the Klay Thompson we are seeing in 2024, is that just where we are? Is there a corner to turn for him? Is there something more that coaching or scheme could do to get more out of Klay Thompson? Or is it something where we're going to see, hey, Klay, we like Klay. If he's hot, we'll ride the hot hand until he's not. But if he's having one of those off Klay nights, which we see more of now lately, we're gonna bench him. We're not gonna sit there and ride Klay going, 5 for 18 from 3 and shooting bricks up. If that's the night he's having and we gotta pull him, we're gonna do so. Is that where we are now?
I think that's where we are. I think it's time for Klay it's time for him to leave Golden State. I really think it's time for him to leave Golden State. He's not going to be the player he was. Injuries just got him. Injuries just has hit him hard. He's not the same player. He can't play defense anymore. He's not consistent enough on the offensive side to really make a difference, particularly late in games. I think it's time for Klay to go.
And gentlemen, let's not forget, he may look young, but he is 33 years old. So he's approaching that mid-30 mark, Mo. What is there? What would the market be for Klay Thompson outside of Golden State?
So I think he still has value because he's a shooter. The difference is, though, I think there was a time when he was considered like a second option. He can give you 20 plus a night. I think that Klay keeps value because he can still be an impactful player, but I think he's more of a role player. I think he's in a transition in his career, so he can be effective, but in a different role. And I'm saying that, and you're hearing me say that. I don't know if mentally Klay Thompson can take that and go, "I'm a role player now, gotcha," and I'm ready to embrace that. That is a tough fall from when you were a star. And even though Steph is the guy, it was Splash Brothers. Right now, what people are saying is it's Steph, and he has no help basically. That right now, Jonathan Kuminga is their second best player, and there is no third best player. There's just a huge gap. It's not only Clay's falling off, Wiggins out to lunch. I think that Klay has a future in the NBA, but I think that it will be in a lesser role.
He's
I
gonna
think
have to.
he can be effective, maybe coming off the bench. And I know that's a lot. That is a tough pill to swallow for a guy that's had the heights that he's had. But that's what happens. Like you said, Chris, he's 33, but his body is probably a few years older than that because of the injuries.
He's gonna have to readjust himself. He's got to readjust himself mentally to accept the fact what he is now. He's a bench player. Maybe could possibly be a six man somewhere, possibly, but I just think that it's time for him to leave Golden State. I think his time is done.
Well, Mo mentioned Wiggins. Wiggins' name has popped up a few times this week in trade speculation. Apparently, there is a market out there. There is a market out there for Andrew Wiggins. The Bucks and the Mavs are both apparently interested in him. Will, first off, do you believe that there is a market for Wiggins? And do you think he'd be a better fit on Milwaukee or in Dallas?
I think he'd be a better fit in Milwaukee because look, and I've said this on this show before, and I took a little bit of heat for it. I love Dame, I do, and there's some rumors going around, some reports going around that they're looking to move Bobby Portis. I wouldn't move Bobby Portis. I don't think he's the problem. I think Dame Lillard's the problem, particularly on the defensive end. The guy's like a walking turnstile. So I think you need to get somebody another guard up in there. To so then
Come on, man.
I think they need to get another guard up in there that can alleviate some of the issues on the defensive end for him. And we all knew coming in it was going to be a defensive hit to have him out there on the floor. I didn't look at him as being this bad. So I keep Portis for Grant Williams of all people. Grant Williams, man, in the down year he's had for the Met, no. You keep Portis, you get another guard up in there that can help spell Dame, particularly on the defensive end, and then you go from there.
Well, I like how you said you got into a little bit of trouble, and then you just leaned into it. You just doubled down.
I took some heat. I love Dame. I do. From the offensive side of the ball, I think he's great, but even his offense took a little bit of a hit this season. Probably because due to the Griffin Rivers coaching change, perhaps. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't move Bobby Portis unless you got somebody that can get some help at the guard spot on the defensive end. And I think that's when Wiggins can come in because Wiggins can play guard or small forward. So I think you bring him in and he can help you big time.
I think Wiggins has value. I don't think the Bucks are a good fit for him because I think they have spacing issues, and then it's too congested. If you play with Luka and Kyrie the way they play, the floor is always spaced. It's always spaced. And Wiggins at his best is really a slasher. So the idea that you have a guy like Luka who's an elite passer, a guy like Kyrie who can draw double teams, I think he would flourish more with Dallas than he would with Milwaukee. You could get bogged down and lost in the offense real easy playing with Giannis by himself. But now you're playing with Giannis and Dame. I feel like the Wiggins that you see with the Warriors that seem to have lost his way, averaging 12 a game, he would be the same guy or worse in Milwaukee the way they're bogged down offensively. He would be better. Now, I'm not saying he may very well get traded there, but I'm just telling you what would be a better fit. Dallas has a more open offense. They play at a faster pace. That benefits his skill set.
Let me ask you a question, Mo. Would you move Dame?
I would have never traded for him, but that's me. That's me. Wait. I know we're laughing. This is not Mo. Mo doesn't like Dame. I didn't say that. I'm simply saying that I think they made a panic move because Giannis made that speech about they need to show me that they're trying to win, and basically implying he might bounce. So they did a panic move, and they got Dame. No question, Dame is a far better scorer than Drew Holiday. But in sports, guys, you would agree chemistry does matter. There's a fit. There's a fit situation.
Particularly basketball.
Right. And there's a continuity there that they had with Drew Holiday that you knew you had an elite point of attack defender. Not to mention, when people throw it into the post, Drew is one of the best guards in basketball at digging down on post players and disrupting them. That gets all those little nuances get lost because Dame doesn't do those types of things. So look, to Chris's question, would I trade Damian Lillard? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't because I don't think Giannis would be good with that, even though it might be good for Giannis. I wouldn't do it. Right now, Giannis is kind of being very diva-like. I think sometimes when we say the asylums are running the inmates are running the asylum. Well, here's the thing. I think Giannis needs to learn the hard way. He wanted that coach, Adrian Griffin. That hasn't worked out. Doc's in there. He wanted Dame. He's got Dame. I think Giannis has to learn the hard way that he's not a GM. So I think they keep Dame. They fail, and then they learn the hard way that's why we have a GM. That's why we have a GM for roster construction.
And I think you're seeing it too. And I said it last week, kind of under my breath a little bit. Is Giannis turning into LeBron James 2.0?
I don't know if he's turning into it. The question could be to you and Chris is, was he always that, but he always kept it in check?
Right.
Because he had a certain image. Remember, Dame had this incredible image for over a decade. Like,
he did.
I don't do super teams, and I'm not going anywhere. If I don't win a title in Portland, I'm never going anywhere. And he's in Milwaukee because he needed to get out of Portland to win a title.
Well, it wasn't that long ago. We were talking about the departure of Adrian from the Bucks, and they were 30-13. And we were saying this is the second best team in basketball right now, 30-13. Well, things have been a little bumpy in the transition. They currently sit tied for third in the East at 33-18. So they've gone 3-5 since the firing. Obviously, that's not all under Doc Rivers, and obviously there's going to be an adjustment. The NBA is peaks and valleys.
Yes.
But as you look at the construction of this team and you look at what's around them, the Cavaliers have won 9 out of 10. They have jumped up into second place. The Knicks have won 9 out of 10. They're tied with the Bucks now and are catching up to them. That's the big competition. I'm not saying for a championship. I'm saying for the top seeding in the Eastern Conference going into the playoffs. Mo and I have talked previously. There's a big difference between the 1 seed and the 4 seed. Your path is a lot nicer for you when you are the 1 seed. Not saying you can't do it from the 4 seed, but all things considered, if a team or a fan base is like, we just want to get there, 1 or 4, we don't care, that's naive. So is it going to get better, Will? Or are we going to see what we're seeing now from Milwaukee the rest of the season? They're going to have nights where they look like the best team in the East, and they're going to have nights continuously where they look as clunky as they have been all season long.
I think it's pretty much going to be status quo from them from this point forward because I don't trust Doc Rivers at all as a coach to move the needle to make a difference for them. I think this is what you get. And shout out to Cleveland real quick, guys, because what Garland went down with that injury with that broken jaw, they pretty much wrote the Cavs off for dead, and now they're for second in the East. So shout out to them. JB Bickerstaff is doing a very good job with the Cavs. We'll see if they can't get that 1 seed. I doubt it, but we'll see. But I just think this is what you get from Milwaukee from this point forward because I don't trust Doc. I don't trust him to move the needle to make a difference for them. All the rah-rah in the world can't get you over most nights.
Well, Clippers fans are puffing their chests out this morning
because
the Los Angeles Clippers are number 1 in the East, baby. Or in the West, excuse me. It was a tough road. It was a little bumpy early on. The first couple weeks of Harden, it looked like it was going to be a failure. but they've righted the ship and they have consistently been winning games over the last 5 or 6 weeks. And here we are. Now they're number one in a very crowded market on top of the West. Technically, they're all tied. The Thunder are second, the Timberwolves are third, and the Nuggets are fourth. Percentage points separating all of them. What do you make of the Clippers? I know the health is always going to be the first question. Can they stay healthy? But if they can stay healthy, are we looking at a legitimate title contender with the Clippers?
Possibly. Again, it's just the health for me. It's just the health. That's my main issue. How long do these guys stay healthy? How long do they keep showing this cohesiveness? And that's my only issue. They have all the talent in the world to do it on that roster. They're deep enough to do it, but will they remain healthy, which is their only if factor? I also like Denver to come out of the West this season. But they're having some issues as well. So it's just with the Clippers, I just don't trust the health. But we'll see. We'll see if Kawhi and Paul George can stay healthy, and if Westbrook can keep playing the way he's playing. He's playing well off the bench. So let's see.
Isn't that always the case with the Clippers, though?
Yep.
It comes down to health.
And we've seen them in first place before.
If they're healthy,
we have.
If they're healthy, they'll be in the Western Conference Finals. I still think it's the Nuggets conference to lose. But I will say Denver does have a weakness, and I think it's the lack of a bench. Like they do miss Bruce Brown and Jeff Green and those guys, and they haven't really found guys to replace the production that they got from them last year.
Mo, don't look now, but Kevin Durant, who thinks he should be in the conversation for one of the greatest basketball players of all time. That same guy, that same KD. No. He and the Suns are slowly but surely making progress in the West. If you look at the standings this morning, they are up to a tie for 5th place. They are right in that next pack. So you got the top 4 teams all essentially tied with each other. And then you got 5, 6, and 7 all essentially tied with each other. And the Suns are right in that mix as they're trying to position themselves to make a run for those top 4 in the second half of the season. But what are you seeing from the Suns as they kind of get their act together and have been playing some pretty good basketball for the last 3 or 4 weeks?
I would start with Devin Booker. Book has stepped his game up. He's had multiple 40-plus games. Look, they're still not a good defensive team, and there are questions about their bench. But when you've got Booker and Bill along with KD and they're all healthy, you've got 3 elite ISO scorers who are all devastating in the mid-range. KD can strike from anywhere on the floor, but they're all right now actually playing at a high level. I would say that when you watch them, like I watched the game last night against Milwaukee, they didn't even play their best game, but each of them at different points in the game took over for different minutes at a time. And it's impressive to watch because of the firepower. And they are in a nice streak. I think they've won
73 of their last 10, won their last 2.
Right. So they've gotten better. They're more cohesive, but I think it also do with health. Bill is looking close to 100%. Booker just came back, and KD's been consistent all year long. So a team with that kind of firepower, guys, you give them a puncher's chance in any series. I wouldn't pick them because I think they're too small, and I don't think they have the ability to get stops.
And well, are they turning into what we thought they were going to be? A good regular season team?
Yeah, they're going to be good.
And you're going to get to the playoffs, Will, and be like, well, I told you they had no defense. I told you they were too small. The fireworks are great on a Tuesday night when no one's really watching. But in a 7-game series, it's a different story.
7-game series, and when you get later into the playoffs, you're going to have to get stops at some point. And like Mo said, I don't think Phoenix can get them when it really, really counts. They're small defensively. So, again, I just don't. Second round, maybe, would be my prediction for them. Because they can beat any team they play in that first round. But second round, your benches that you go up against get better. Your overall teams get better. So, again, offensively, they can stick with anybody. I just don't think they can get enough stops to win.
Well, before we get you out of here, the trade deadline is approaching. There are many names out there. There are many teams out there. We're not going to go through all of them. Will, if you had to name one team that needs to make a move, whether it's to solidify their playoff hopes, whether it's to solidify themselves for a championship run, what team out of all of them needs to make a move the most?
Bulls moving Zach LaVine for a point guard. And I'll say that till I'm blue in the face. This team has potential to make a playoff run if you get a point guard in place, which we don't have right now. Caruso is great, but he can hit you in spurts. But overall, we need a point guard. We just get Kobe White just exploded this season. So I still think we need to move Zach, get you a good point guard up in there, and let the chips fall where they may. DeRozan's playing well. Drummond's playing well. Vooch is playing well. So this team, I think from the bottom end of things, can make some noise from the play-in tournament on up.
Mo, one team.
The Knicks. I feel like
I know where you're going. I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
Who you kicking off the island, Mo?
He doesn't know. I feel like this team is a player away from like making a real run at the conference finals, and even though they're in the same conference in the same city, I actually think Mikal Bridges would be a perfect fit for the Knicks. You put Mikal Bridges with Brunson and OG along with DiVincenzo and some of the other complementary pieces, and that's a scary team because now you can be elite defensively on the perimeter and still have the firepower to contend with everybody on offense. And if the cost is Julius Randle, I don't even think that.
I told you.
No. I know what you guys are gonna say. Mo doesn't like Julius. I don't dislike Julius Randle. I like Julius Randle fine. Matter of fact, I'll tell you how much I like Julius Randle. Real quick. I'm sure you guys have seen the rumors about LeBron getting traded, right?
Yep.
And the Knicks package was like a bunch of number 1 picks in Julius Randle for LeBron, right?
Yep.
I'm all for that. I'm totally fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Mo, is that more about getting rid of LeBron though?
It's a little bit about both, if I'm being honest. It's about both.
And LeBron is playing it smart. You saw him with the Knicks towel on the other night. Doing that post-game interview, you saw him with the Knicks towel on. So it's like he's saying, he's just y'all come get me.
Jeannie's gonna learn the hard way. You mess around with that guy, and let's assume the Lakers don't get out of the. Let's say they lose in the second round or something like that. Whatever the case may be, that guy gets the free agency. 100% he opts out of his contract and bounces. 100%.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And if Jeannie left that happen, that's on her. That's her fault. That's on her watch because you could have traded him with value. Because when he gets to free agency, he's going to leave you and you're going to get nothing in return like he normally does. And the team is going to be decimated because we've already gotten rid of all our picks and everything to please him. We got one number 1 pick, and that's not until 2029.
Yep. Would you say that one ring was worth it with LeBron? Was that one ring worth it?
I think the Lakers front office would say it's worth it. If you told me we're going to get LeBron, he's going to bring us another ring. Maybe if all things align, we get 2 out of it. Perfect. But if we get 1 ring, the way the Lakers think, it's been a successful partnership. So, yes, I think Jeannie's 100% happy with the partnership with LeBron. She would love to have gotten more. But, yeah, it's been worth it. I think think about this. If you're Detroit and I said, you guys are going to make 1 run and win 1 title that you haven't won in a minute, yep. And then after that, you might not be very good for the next 6 or 7 years. They would have said worth it.
They would take it. They would take it.
Yeah, heartbeat.
In a second. Yep. New York minute. Yep.
Will, always a pleasure having you on here, sir. We will see you next week.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Everyone out there, have a great day.
Mo, always a pleasure having Will on the show.
For sure.
This guy coming up next, though, we haven't had him on the show in a minute, and that, of course, is the NFL genius himself, Gene from Wire to Wire. Mo, in fact, he hasn't been here in so long that apparently it's just a rumor, but I hear he has merch now.
What?
I hear there is merch. So that's where we're going to start today. Let's bring Gene on the show. Gene, is there merch?
Yes. So we are having mugs and we are having T-shirts made. Marry the coach to the quarterback.
Awesome.
Being made based off the morning show's recommendation.
Thank you. Gene, how you been? We haven't seen you in a minute.
I'm miserable. I'm very miserable because I analyze and break down the NFL and I know what's going to happen Sunday and I'm miserable. I'm miserable.
Gene, before we get to the NFL, and I didn't tell you we were going to do this, but I want to talk a little college football first. And we all know, we all have our opinions. We all look at what's happening in general with the college football landscape, whichever direction we want to take it. But I want to focus specifically on Washington. So Washington just played for a national championship just a handful of weeks ago, okay? And they lost that game, obviously. But since then, they have lost their entire team, sans 2 players. They are returning 2 starters from a national championship caliber football team from a top 4 ranked season. They are returning 2 starters next year because the 15 players have left to go to Power 4 conference teams. Gene, that's not ideal for the sport, is it? Like, what I get it. I get it's within the rules. I'm not going to sit here and say, F NIL or the transfer portal. And there's benefits, there's drawbacks, but just in a capsule, when you say, hey, who was in the national championship game last year? Oh, Washington was there? How are they going to do this season? They might win 3 games because they have no team. They're literally completely starting over because the rest of college football has come in and taken their best players. And I know that's hyperbolic. It's not like they stole them, right? They were a willing participant in that. But is that what we're looking at, Gene? Are we looking at a program like Washington who can have a good year and it be a catapult for players to get to a better program?
There's a lot of factors that have to do with this. I mean, we've seen a lighter version of this happen just last year with TCU.
Yes.
They lost a ton of players after going to the national championship and getting gutted by, Georgia. But there's a lot that has to do with this, right? They're the 5th most relevant program in a WAC 12 that's destroyed, that's no longer a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's number 1. It was a Cinderella story to begin with. Number 2, they lost their head coach.
They did.
Their head coach is now the head coach of Alabama.
Yep.
So, of course, he's going to grab a guy or 2 that follows him.
4.
And number
4.
4.
It took 4. And
it's not – it's just when you're in that situation where you're losing your quarterback, your wide receiver to the draft, you're losing 4 of your guys to where your head coach went. There's a lot of guys that got a lot more recognition and notoriety playing on Washington this year because they got that. So they're going to take that jump to the NFL and take that road immediately. I think this is a really one-off situation with the Pac-12 kind of falling apart and with everything that's like they're the 5th most relevant team in the Pac-12 this year. Now, granted, they made it to the national championship, but you're not going to argue to me that USC or Oregon or teams like UCLA are not going to be a better landing spot, especially losing your head coach, especially losing your all-world wide receiver, especially losing your 7th-year quarterback. I don't know. I don't think free agency is great for college football to begin with, but this isn't really an every year thing. It's when you have a miracle run like a TCU or a Washington, it's going to happen. Big teams are going to pick off some of your best players. And ask yourself this, if you're an offensive lineman, because that's really where they lost a lot of their juice. If you're an offensive lineman, you want to play for Alabama or Georgia, or you want to play for Washington? Where's your exposure coming from? You want to play for Texas with Quinn Ewers coming back or Arch Manning? Or do you want to play for Washington?
Yeah, they lost a lot of their line to Oklahoma and Ole Miss. They lost their defensive line to Alabama and Colorado. And then some other teams that they lost players to: Oregon, Stanford, Florida, Miami, Utah, A&M. It's a mix. It's a mix. They lost people to everyone. Gene, as we prepare for the Super Bowl, obviously there's a lot of stories trending out there. And we get these stories because you're basically putting all the players on both teams in one spot for a week, and people are just continuously talking to them. And then when you're not talking to the players on the actual teams, you're bringing in all these former players and all these current players, and you're asking them questions about players on the current teams. So you're getting secondary sound bites from them. But one of the consistent things that has been happening, and we all know the Patrick Mahomes side of it. We all know what's at stake for him. We all know what he's done and what he can do. But on the other side of it is Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy just finished his first full season as a starting NFL quarterback. He started for half the season in his first year, went to an NFC championship game, got injured. Second year, he comes back healthy, goes through what every quarterback goes through over the stretch of a season, ups and downs. It ends with a division, an NFC championship, and now here we are. Is there anything that he can do on Sunday to change his current narrative? Because for everything you hear on Patrick's side, and I'm not even trying to say they're on the same level because they're not, but winning a Super Bowl as a quarterback is something. And I know people will say things like, Trent Dilfer. I get it. There's outliers in every situation. The 2001 Baltimore Ravens defense was one of the greatest defenses of all time. Do not sit here and try to compare the 2001 Baltimore Ravens defense to the 2024 San Francisco 49. Like, stop it. That's silly. If he wins the Super Bowl, does it start to change the narrative? Is he going to start to get credit just for being a good quarterback in the league? Because we're still there. We're still riding the narrative of, it's Brock Purdy and the rest of them. That's why he's there. It's the rest of them.
Chris, the best way I can put this to you is there's a lot of people in this world that do not like to admit that they're wrong.
So true.
And Chris, I'll tell you, last year, Brock Purdy stinks. I watched him in Iowa State. He's terrible. He's going to fall apart this year. The 49ers are not going to win with Brock Purdy. And then I watched week 1. I didn't even need week 2. I watched week 1 versus Pittsburgh. And there was a couple design blitzes and a couple design defensive plays that had TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick trying to confuse Brock Purdy. And I watched him go through his progressions and hit the right receiver on the right read, and not on progression 1, not on progression 2, but on his third read. And I said after the game, I was wrong about this kid. He's really developed a great offensive mind in Kyle Shanahan. I don't think he's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow, but I do think he's a top 12 to 15 quarterback in football. And I think that there's not many quarterbacks that would have been able to go into San Francisco, be humble enough to listen to exactly what the offensive coordinator / head coach, Kyle Shanahan, told him to do, and did that. And should the narrative change? Of course it will change. If he goes out and plays a great Super Bowl, they have to change it. Let me give you an example, right? When I read this question, I was excited because last year headed into the Super Bowl, the narrative behind Jalen Hurts is he can't throw the football. Make him throw the football. He can't do A, B, or C. And then after the Super Bowl, they're like, oh, damn, Jalen Hurts top 3 quarterback in football. Like, he played his ass off in that Super Bowl. He made pinpoint throws. He looked great. And all of a sudden, he was a quarterback that can't throw. Make him throw. And Spagnuolo did. He threw blitz after blitz after blitz. And Jalen Hurts looked great in that Super Bowl game. And headed into this year, you got a lot of people that said Jalen Hurts is a top 2 or 3 quarterback in football. Now, obviously, he's taken a step back this year, given the circumstances that happened. But narratives can change when all eyes are watching. And if Brock Purdy goes out and performs the way he performed in the second half of that Detroit Lions game, the narrative has to change. And I do think that it'll be a little annoying because I think they will overrate him. I think that the Brock Purdy thing is absurd. You have some guys that are like, he's 3, he's 4. You have some guys like he's 25. Like, no, he's not. He's not either one of those things. He's anywhere in that realm from 8 to 14. And in that Super Bowl, you can easily say he can move up to 8 or 7, or he can move down to 14. But if you're ignorant enough to say he's a bottom 5 quarterback after watching this season, you're just not. You either want to be right or you want to be ignorant.
And Mo, isn't that kind of how the Super Bowl works? I mean, Jalen Hurts was a great example of it. He came out of there and people were saying it's Mahomes, and then the new number 2 is Jalen Hurts. And I think realistic Eagle fans were like, well, thank you. But he's not quite that. He's in the top 10. I'm not going to sit here and say he just jumped Burrow because he played one great game. And we saw that this season. At points this season, he did what he did in the Super Bowl. He made great throws. He's always going to have that ability. But then you also saw the negative side of Hurts at times. So he evens out. He evens out to being about a top 10 quarterback, which I think realistic people believed. So, Mo, hopefully the expectation will be coming out of the Super Bowl, win or lose, if Purdy plays a good game. Hopefully people come out saying back-to-back NFC championships, Super Bowl appearance year 2, he's a top 15 quarterback. He might be a top 10 quarterback. That should be an honest reflection. Fair, Mo?
It is fair. I think Brock is a top 10 to 15 quarterback. And if he plays if he plays a good football game, a clean game, and they lose this Super Bowl, I'm sure some people will try to say it was because he couldn't do more. I'm not going to be one of them. I'm going to say he lost because Patrick Mahomes is that special, that he's that elite. And maybe it just came down to you were going up against a football god, and it's not meant to be. And I'll be disappointed, but at the same time, I'm going to be, as a fan, I'm going to say, I'm looking forward to next season. I want to see if Brock Purdy can build off of what he's done year after year and continue his development. Maybe he's a top 14 quarterback. Maybe he continues and becomes a top 10 quarterback. And I'm okay with that. I think we have our quarterback going forward. And a lot of people still question that. I don't.
Gene, I don't know. Maybe you can do it. Maybe you can be in charge of reining in Patrick Mahomes' family, because that seems to be the only drawback for Patrick Mahomes, is that his people and his family just keep stepping out of line a little bit. So maybe we got to hire Gene to go over to the Mahomes family and just keep everybody in check from doing dumb crap. But Gene, we know the Patrick Mahomes story. We know what he's capable of. Give me a name that isn't quarterback related that could have an impact on this Super Bowl that no one's really talking about right now. What could be one player that, maybe they're not going to come out of nowhere. Maybe you're like, no, you should be looking at this name. What is that one name?
So I think that name is Fred Warner, and I'm not saying he's coming out of nowhere, but I think that the way that the 49ers linebacker group can, I guess, limit Travis Kelce will be exactly the way this game is won for the 49ers. Now, you brought up the Mahomes thing in his family, and I'll get right back to Fred Warner, but I got to get this out. Does Mahomes' family not remind you? Ever seen Bad Boys? You've watched the movie Bad Boys, right? Does it not remind you of like Mahomes being the captain and walking up to Mike Lowry and Marcus and be like, what are Mike and Marcus going to do to screw up my day today?
Right.
And like, I feel like that he's talking to his family saying that, like, what are my brother and my father going to do to screw up my day today? Now,
and initially it was his wife. Like, he got Brittany in check. Brittany was the issue early on, and then it was the brother, and now it's the father. Like, the brother is not even allowed in the suite with Taylor Swift, by the way. He literally has to wait outside till the game is over to see the rest of his family because they don't let him into the suite. Taylor's people have realized, no, she's not going to be around him.
But back to your original question, I think Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, I think the linebacking core that the 49ers have will be, you know what? Let me add one more, right? And I love that this is getting brought up more, but I think Deshaun Gibson safety for the 49ers, could have a huge impact out of nowhere in this football game, because he will be in charge of Travis Kelce in, I guess, above that Fred Warner Greenlaw zone. He will be the deep end protection for what the 49ers are going to try to do to slow down Travis Kelce. I think Charvarius Ward and I think Diamante Lenore are going to do a good job of limiting Rashee Rice. I don't have much concern of what the 49ers are going to do versus any other wide receiver that's on the Kansas City Chiefs. But Travis Kelce in this playoffs has like found the fountain of youth. The last 2 weeks, he's looked incredible. He has been the catalyst that keeps that offense rolling. Obviously, they're going to run the football. You can't put an 8-man box versus Kansas City, and Kansas City takes advantage of that because you have a quarterback like Mahomes that can spin it the way he does. But I think the huge difference in this game will be the way the 49ers contain that X factor, which is Travis Kelce.
Gene, does Kelce retire when the season's over?
Yes. I think he does.
Does his
I
brother
said that
retire?
a month ago. No, I think Jason Kelce comes back.
Okay.
It sounds really funny, but Jason Kelce just replied to a fan on Instagram the other day when they were asking, like begging him, like, please come back, Jason, don't do this for football. And he goes, I'm trying everything I can. And that opens the door a little bit. And the fact that he hasn't announced his retirement, but I could see a world in which both of them retire together. I think that sounds crazy. I think Travis is more likely to retire than Jason. I think Travis is really, when he talked in week 9 and week 10 about how his injuries have really bottled up and how he feels it in his bones, I knew it then. And I reported it December 20th. It was our Christmas show. I said, Travis Kelce's retiring. And then a report came out the end of January to Travis Kelce's retiring. I'm like, I said this a month ago, guys. You weren't listening. I think Travis retires. I think Jason's about a 50-50 shot. But part of me believes he'll come back for one more year because of the offensive coordinators and because Jason's a loyal guy, right? Like, he's the type of guy that he has such loyalty to Nick Sirianni that he wants to prove that Nick wasn't the problem. So with the new coordinators that are in town, I think he'll try to help out the
Gene, is he coming back because he also believes that they can win it all still? Like he looks at his teammates and goes, we're still one of the best teams in football. Like,
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like unfinished business. Like, I know he loves the game of football, but is he coming back because he'd like another shot at a Super Bowl?
Absolutely. I mean, Mo, let me ask you a question real quick. Do you not think that Philadelphia Eagles roster, especially with Howie Roseman and the young talent that they have on defense, could look a lot better with a new DC and a new offensive coordinator?
100%.
And I think that team was exposed last year. I think their coordinators, that teams made adjustments against what Philadelphia was doing, and their coordinators were like, I don't know what to do. And they were like so lost on how to respond. They moved from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia. The offensive coordinator, they really couldn't do anything. I think it's real telling A.J. Brown's response to Brian Johnson being let go. He's like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I knew something was going to happen. Like, he didn't, like, there was no, we love Brian. Brian's a great guy. There's nothing like it was for Nick. Whereas all the players came out and said, Nick is loyal. Nick's a great coach. You know, they didn't do that at all with Brian Johnson. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. But that's kind of the world that we live in.
Gene, do you put any validity into the Andy Reid report that there is any sort of possibility that he hangs it up after this season?
I mean, how many times has the guy got to shut it down? He shut it down 3 times.
I know.
No, I think Andy Reid loves coaching. I think he absolutely loves his situation that he's in. Why would you walk away from one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and how many Super Bowls that you can win? You know how much Andy Reid loves coaching? He coached a week after his kid died.
Yep.
That is, like, stop it. No, I don't think so. I don't think there's any validity to that report. I think that there was down times in Kansas City this year. Someone sparked it, and it ended up becoming more than what it needed to be. He shut that report down 3 times.
The Super Bowls he would be leaving on the table if he walked away after this season would be ridiculous. But speaking of coaching, Gene, we are looking at a season next year without Bill Belichick as a head coach. Vrabel may not have a job. Eric Bieniemy may not have a job. What is happening in the coaching world in the NFL, where you have a guy like Eric Bieniemy who somehow it looks like he hurt his career more going to Washington. Like all the hype and circumstance going in, oh, he's probably the next Washington head coach. He's just kind of there waiting in the wings behind Rivera. And then almost his unceremonious, very quiet exit, and he doesn't have a job. And then Vrabel hits the market, and you're like, oh, he's the Patriots head coach. Or even if the Patriots really want to stick with Mayo, he's going to land. Nope, he's apparently too intimidating when he does interviews. And then you got Bill Belichick, who you're like, he's not going to go strong arm his way into another organization. If he wants to coach, he's going to at least say the right things. Then he's going to get the job. Then he'll do the Bill. Nope. He blew that up. What's happening, Gene?
Well, I'll start with Bill. I think Bill Belichick takes the Philadelphia Eagles or Dallas Cowboys job next year, depending on what team does not win the division or solidify themselves. Because I'm telling you right now, Sirianni and Mike McCarthy do not get another opportunity after this year. So I think he's looking for that high-profile job in which he can walk into a winning organization. I think Bill Belichick will be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. That's my personal opinion. Mike Vrabel, the reports about Mike Vrabel are laughable. So wait, he's too intimidating of a guy. He's too big of a presence. You're talking about a guy, I think he's 12 games above 500 with some of the worst talent that you can put together in Tennessee. And he's done that all. It's absurd how this man's not a head coach. 1 year off, I think Mike Vrabel will be a head coach also. Well, let's get to the Eric Bieniemy stuff. I already gave my round of applause to NFL owners this year. They hired Gerard Mayo. They hired Raheem Morris. They hired Antonio Pierce. But that doesn't mean that all organizations think this way.
Right.
So I think, and this is just a personal opinion, I think that the opportunities for Eric Bieniemy to get a head coach because of his personality and because of who he is are limited. And I think a lot of that has to do with his race. And I think that listen, I thought Atlanta was his best shot. I thought Atlanta was going to hire an African-American coach this offseason. I thought it was going to be Eric Bieniemy. They went Raheem Morris, and I don't fault them for that. Raheem Morris is a guy that really deserved a real chance. I don't think there's many opportunities in the NFL. Houston, Atlanta, they're just very, very good situations to walk into that are going to support you as an African-American head coach. And then there's Carolina with David Tepper. And then there's Tennessee with that crazy woman.
She's
that
insane.
Reminds me. And then there's Washington, D.C. with that organization. Those organizations, I don't think we're ever going to hire an African-American head coach. I just don't. And I think that, be as what you may, I think the opportunities are still limited for African-American head coaches. And I think Eric Bieniemy will be an offensive coordinator or offensive assistant to a Super Bowl caliber team going into this season. He'll find the job. I just think that he's shell-shocked in the situation that he's in. I wish that Raheem Morris would have reached out to him and hired him as the OC, but he didn't. Right, but I think there will be situations in which I think there will be situations in which he'll find a job and he'll find a situation to latch onto and be another offensive coordinator. And we'll be talking about him next year because he's taken Sam Howell and led the league in passing for 16 weeks, but yet he's not a great offensive mind. I don't get it.
So let me ask you real quick to follow up, Gene.
Yes, sir.
You keep hearing this line that he doesn't interview well. What does that mean? What is
it?
It
means he's black. I'm sorry to say it that way. It's their excuse for hiring an underqualified. Dan Quinn got the effing head. I don't want to curse. Dan Quinn got the head coaching job of the Washington Commanders, a retread coach that had one great year with Kyle Shanahan as his offensive coordinator, which Matt Ryan won MVP that year and failed and got way too many years in Atlanta to fail. I'm tired of he doesn't interview well. I'm tired of it. Because why? He has a strong opinion about offense. Because, even what LaShawn McCoy said, which, by the way, I love LaShawn McCoy, and I'm a fan of him as a player. But, man, some things are better left unsaid.
Yep.
And even if you disagree with LaShawn McCoy, even if you disagree with Eric Bieniemy, this isn't the type of stuff that you need to be putting out there to affect that man from getting a head coaching job. I'm not a fan of it.
Gene, before we get you out of here, I want to talk a little bit about the wide receiver free agent class coming up. The top 3 names on that class are going to be Tee Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr., and Mike Evans. Higgins, I agree. He should be the number 1 name on that list. For me, Gene, though, I don't think Higgins is getting quite the respect coming into free agency that I think he's going to have impact-wise when he joins a team. I know that Jamar Chase was in Cincinnati, and I know that Joe Burrow has been hurt, so the offense hasn't looked the way the offense should look. I think, and tell me if I'm wrong because you watch a lot more tape than I do, I think Higgins is a bona fide number 1 receiver in this league, and he could be that kind of a game changer on offense depending who his quarterback is. Am I wrong for thinking that?
I'm giving you a spoiler alert. Tonight we're doing Tee Higgins or.
Okay.
And I will be on the opposite side of a lot of the Tee Higgins or. Me and you are on different sides of the fence when it comes to Tee Higgins. I think Tee Higgins is a number 2 at best. I don't think he'll ever be a number 1. I don't think he is a number 1. I think Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, a lot of these number 2s that are on teams that are better than him. I think he disappears in big moments. I think he's too frigid and frail of a body frame. I'm not a fan of him. I think he's good, right? But I think he's going to get overpaid in this market. And I think like an area like Chicago, right? If you go over and draft Caleb Williams and move on from Justin Fields, you could easily bring in a Tee Higgins and have him and DJ Moore be your 1A and 1B. And that's a best case scenario for him. But I definitely don't think he's I don't think he's a 1A.
Cottrell's telling you to get out of here, Gene. We know where Cottrell is tonight. Gene, what we got? What else is happening tonight on Wire to Wire?
Well, we're actually going to have fan conversation tonight. We do our full Super Bowl breakdown. We'll have we obviously have our block pool. If you always want to get a block, it's not filled up. But we'll have our Super Bowl props, our predictions. We do our full Super Bowl show. We're going to talk a little NBA midseason awards, and then we're going to do a little game of Tee Higgins or. And we also have a full breakdown of we're going to have fan questions. Any fan that wants a question, we're posting it about maybe an hour or so. I think that you'll have a lot of good fan questions that make the air tonight and a lot of good conversation.
All right, Gene, always a pleasure, sir. We will see you next week.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, Gene. Appreciate you.
Well, let's close out the show with this. Some rumblings, if you will, from Chi-Town. It looks like maybe the Chicago Bears are favored to keep Justin Fields. Obviously, that could be a smokescreen. You're going to see a lot of different things coming out as we get closer to the draft. What are they going to do? Do they want Caleb Williams? We know that Caleb Williams doesn't necessarily want to go there. But Mo, if they do decide to keep Justin Fields, obviously the number 1 pick is going to be up for grabs. And we only got about 30 seconds here, so you don't have to name specific teams, but just answer the question. If you were a team within reach of the number 1 pick, would you mortgage the farm to go get Caleb Williams? Is he that guy in your opinion?
Yes.
Okay.
I would mortgage the farm to go get him. I think he is a legit franchise changer. And that's all you're looking for. So yes, I would.
So he's Cam Newton. Is what you're
I'd like to think he's better than that, but sure.
Got it. Because he is. Cam's a game changer, a difference maker. You know.
Look, the guy won an MVP, took a team to the Super Bowl. He was a really good football player in a short window. But he's not we could get into the Hall of Fame thing. I'm not even don't get me started on that insanity, but yes.
All right, Mo, close us out, sir.
Thank you guys so much for joining Chris and I this morning. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Check out all the great content we have at Sports Empire Network. Check out the Empire.
Make sure you're back here, same time, same place tomorrow morning. We are going to start breaking down the Super Bowl. We are getting closer to the big game. We are getting closer to our official picks for the Super Bowl. All of that and more right here tomorrow morning. Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show powered by Sports Empire Network, and we will see you in the morning.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn.